Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into one of the most emotional moments in Jack and Tu Tien's journey, their long-awaited wedding day. From the heartfelt blessing of Mrs. Ly, Jack's loving mother, to the miraculous moment when Tu Tien realizes new life is growing inside her. This story is filled with love, family, and destiny. If you enjoy it, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next chapters, and let us know where you're watching from and how you feel about this story. Your thoughts mean so much to us. The morning sun crept slowly over the misty hills, spilling a soft golden glow across the valley. But this wasn't an ordinary dawn. The air trembled with excitement, that kind of quiet thrill that makes every sound sharper, every color brighter. Today was no ordinary day. It was the day Jack and Ly Tu Tien, the couple whose gentle love story had touched every heart in the village, would finally become husband and wife. From the winding dirt roads to the creaky wooden bridge by the stream, every inch of the village shimmered with celebration. Wild orchids tied with thin red ribbons swayed gently in the wind. Children ran barefoot, their laughter echoing through the bamboo groves. Women in bright scarves hurried along, their arms full of flowers and trays of food. Under the ancient banyan tree, the elders sat cross-legged, watching it all with warm, knowing smiles, as if blessing the happiness unfolding before them. Everything looked perfect, almost too perfect. But behind every perfect picture lies a shadow, quiet and unseen. At the heart of it all stood Mrs. Ly, Jack's mother, a simple woman in her faded ao ba bia, her hair streaked with silver, her movements calm but purposeful. She had carried her son through every hardship life had thrown at them. And today, she carried something else, a secret born from love. While the village prepared, she worked quietly behind the scenes. One evening, she visited the old craftsman at the edge of the forest. The man had known her since she was young. She placed her calloused hands on his table and said softly, "Build me an arch, not just any arch, but one made from the same precious timber your father used when my husband and I were married. Cover it with wild orchids, the same kind he gave me the day we promised forever." The craftsman looked at her with gentle eyes and nodded. He understood. It wasn't just decoration. It was a bridge between generations, a mother's silent blessing carved in wood and memory. By noon, the courtyard was alive with music and color. The wooden arch rose tall at the village gate, its scent of orchids carried on the mountain breeze. When Jack arrived and saw it, he stopped in his tracks. He didn't need to ask who had built it. His mother's love was written in every petal, every curve of the wood. His eyes softened, gratitude welled up in his chest. But there was no time for words. Guests were arriving, drums and gongs echoing through the hills. The ceremony began. Music filled the air, laughter rippled through the crowd, and the whole village pulsed with joy. Then suddenly, silence. Mrs. Ly stood slowly, her every movement commanding quiet respect. In her trembling hands, she carried a small wooden box. Every eye followed her as she stepped to the center of the courtyard. Her voice, though soft, carried over the crowd. "These rings," she said, opening the box to reveal two simple silver bands, "were made by your father and me when we were young. They hold our story, love, patience, and trust. Today, I give them to you. Protect each other, always." The world seemed to stop. Even the drums fell silent. Ly Tu Tien's eyes blurred with tears. Jack reached for his mother's hand, gripping it tightly, his voice trapped somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Then, a murmur, a shift in the air near the gate. A man appeared, tall, silent, his eyes fixed on Jack. The crowd stirred uneasily. Whispered questions rippled like wind over water. Who was he? Why now? Mrs. Ly turned, her sharp eyes catching his face, narrowing just slightly. But her voice remained calm. "Continue," she said. "Today is for joy." And just like that, the drums resumed, laughter returned, and the tension slipped away, though not entirely. Not yet. As the sun began to dip behind the hills, the ceremony climbed toward its second crescendo. When Jack and Ly Tu Tien spoke their vows, the whole valley seemed to listen. And then, from the far edge of the crowd, came a line of young women dressed in vivid silk gowns, carrying wildflowers and singing an ancient melody that had long been forgotten. It was the Highland Blessing Ceremony, a sacred ritual once thought lost, now revived under Mrs. Ly's quiet guidance. The air shimmered with wonder. The drums echoed against the mountains. The song floated through the trees. Elders wiped tears from their eyes, remembering their youth. Children stared, wide-eyed, entranced by the beauty of tradition reborn. At the center of it all, Jack knelt before his mother, his voice shaking. "Mother," he whispered, "thank you. For her, for this day, for everything. I will spend my life honoring you and her." Beside him, Ly Tu Tien bowed deeply, tears glistening on her cheeks. "You've given me more than love," she said softly. "You've given me a family. From this moment, you are my mother too." Applause erupted, loud, heartfelt, unstoppable. The sound of laughter and tears filled the night, blending into one song of pure happiness. But in the middle of that joy, something changed. Ly Tu Tien froze. Her smile faltered. One hand drifted instinctively to her belly. Jack saw it instantly. His heart jumped. He rushed to her side. "What's wrong?" he whispered. Her lips trembled, her eyes shining with disbelief. "Jack, our baby," she said, voice breaking. "He just moved, as if he's celebrating with us." Time stopped again. The drums quieted. Every breath in the courtyard held still. Then, an eruption. Applause, laughter, tears, blessings whispered into the night. Women pressed their palms together, murmuring prayers for the new life stirring inside her. Men clapped Jack on the shoulder. Children cheered without understanding why. Jack stood frozen, overwhelmed. Then, with a broken laugh, he pulled Ly Tu Tien into his arms. "Not just a wife," he whispered against her hair, "but a mother. You've given me everything." From her seat, Mrs. Ly covered her mouth, eyes glistening. "God is kind," she whispered. "Today we celebrate not only love, but new life." The drums rose again, louder, brighter, as if the mountains themselves were drumming in celebration. And there, under the golden glow of lanterns and the watchful sky, 3 lives were forever bound: a mother, a son, and the woman carrying the next heartbeat of their family. As the night deepened, the sounds of the celebration faded into a gentle hum. Lanterns swayed softly in the evening breeze, their golden glow casting ripples of light across the quiet courtyard. The drums had stilled, the laughter had faded, and one by one, the guests returned to their homes, leaving behind a warmth that still lingered in the air. Inside the small house, the world felt smaller, quieter, as if time itself had paused to honor what had just begun. Only 3 heartbeats filled the silence: Jack's, Ly Tu Tien's, and the tiny one fluttering inside her. Candles flickered, their light trembling on the walls. The faint scent of wild orchids, the same ones Mrs. Loy had used for the arch, still lingered, sweet and soft. Tu Tien sat at the edge of the bed, her hands resting protectively on her belly, her cheeks glowing with both exhaustion and joy. Jack sat beside her, silent for a long moment, just watching her, the woman who had become both his peace and his future. Finally, he reached out and took her hand, their fingers locking together. "Today," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion, "was the most beautiful day of my life. But when you told me about our baby, I felt like my heart might burst. From now on, Tu Tien, I'm not just your husband, I'm a father, and I promise I'll protect you both, no matter what comes." Tu Tien turned toward him, eyes glistening like the candlelight itself. "Jack," she whispered, "ever since I met you, my life has been full of blessings. You gave me hope when I had none, faith when I was lost. Now, with our child, I don't just have a husband, I have a home, and soon our baby will have a family filled with love." Jack wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close until their hearts beat in rhythm. "No more tears," he murmured, his voice soft but firm. "Not for you, not for our child. From here on, only happiness." Outside, the night was calm. The moon hung high above the mountains, silver light spilling through the window. The orchids rustled gently in the breeze. A whisper from Mrs. Loy's loving hands, still blessing them even from afar. Tu Tien leaned her head on Jack's shoulder. "Do you remember the first time we met?" she asked softly. Jack smiled. "Of course I do. You were standing in the rain with a basket of vegetables, refusing to go home until you sold the last one. You looked so stubborn and so beautiful." Tu Tien laughed quietly. "And you, a stranger, offered to help me for no reason." Jack grinned. "I didn't do it for no reason. I think I already knew then. Something about you felt like home." The room grew warm with memory. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. After a while, Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "I wrote something before the ceremony," he said shyly. "I didn't get the chance to say it aloud, but I want you to hear it." Tu Tien unfolded the note carefully. His handwriting was uneven, but his heart was in every line. She read softly, "If love is the seed, patience is the rain. You were the rain that made my heart bloom again. When storms came, you stayed. When the world turned dark, you became my light. Today, I vow not just to love you, but to grow with you. Through every season, every breath, every heartbeat." Her eyes filled with tears. She looked up at him, voice trembling. "Jack, it's beautiful." He smiled, brushing away a tear from her cheek. "I meant every word." Tu Tien placed his hand over her belly. "Then promise me one more thing," she said softly. "Whatever happens, we'll protect this little heart. Together." Jack's fingers tightened around hers. "I promise," he whispered. "Always." The night deepened around them. Outside, the river's murmur drifted through the open window, soft and steady. A lantern flickered, then went out, its smoke curling like a prayer into the dark. Tu Tien lay down gently, her head resting on Jack's chest, his arm wrapped around her, strong and safe. "Do you think our baby will have your smile?" she murmured sleepily. "I hope," Jack whispered. "He has your heart." The candles burned lower, their glow dimmed to a soft golden haze. Jack listened to the rhythm of her breathing, each rise and fall matching his own. He bent close, his lips brushing her hair. "Sleep well, my love, you and our child. You're my forever." Even in her half-dream, Tu Tien smiled. "Forever," she breathed back. The night outside seemed to hold them close, the moonlight streaming through the window, blessing their quiet love. The orchids swayed gently, petals catching the silver light, as if Mrs. Loy herself had whispered a final prayer for her son and new daughter. And beneath Tu Tien's heartbeat, another one pulsed softly. Tiny, fragile, full of promise. 3 heartbeats, woven together by love. That night wasn't grand or loud. It wasn't filled with feasts or music. It was something purer, a sacred beginning, a promise written not in words, but in silence, touch, and trust. When dawn finally arrived, pale gold spilled through the bamboo walls. Jack stirred, brushing a kiss against Tu Tien's forehead. Her eyes fluttered open, still heavy with sleep, but she smiled. "Good morning," she whispered. "Morning, my love," he replied, smiling back. Outside, the roosters crowed, and the first laughter of children echoed through the hills. The world had moved on, but inside that small home, everything felt timeless, suspended between one ending and a new beginning. Jack looked at her, his eyes soft. "Yesterday was the best day of my life," he said. "But today is the first day of our forever." Tu Tien smiled, placing her hand gently over her belly. "And our child's story begins here, surrounded by love, by hope, by family." Jack nodded, pulling her close again. "Then let's build everything from that love." Outside, the orchids by the window glowed in the morning sun. The same flowers chosen by Mrs. Loy, now symbols of everything she'd passed on: love, resilience, and blessing. And as the day unfolded, 3 heartbeats moved together in harmony: Jack, Ly Tu Tien, and the little one yet to be born. The living proof that love, once rooted in kindness, can survive any storm.